Welcome back to Gloved Up Garage. I'm working on my daily driver, which is a 2003 Lincoln Town Car. This car has 167,000 miles on it. I've owned it for about 6 months now, and I had to replace the airbags immediately. And then from there, I've just been going through the suspension, replacing stuff that I can find that's wore out. I've replaced the rear shocks after I did the airbags in the back because I was getting a clunk. Like when you come up to a stop sign and the weight transfers forward and then you go to take back off and the weight transfers to the rear, I was getting a clunk and it kind of felt like it was coming from the back. So I went ahead and ordered up some shocks for it and replaced those back here in the back. Now the driver's side shock was completely collapsed. It wouldn't rebound at all. It was really, really slow to rebound. And I thought that was the issue when I put it on. Turns out that wasn't the issue. I still had the clunk after I put it back together and drove it. So I knew it had to be something like control arm or the Watts link or something like that. Well, I found out what it was. I just took this control arm. This is an upper control arm off of the passenger side here in the rear. And these bushing sleeves fell out on the floor when I pulled the control arm out. This is the new one. That's what it should look like. The bushing sleeve should be in the bushing and not on the floor. So this is probably what was causing my clunk. Now I'm on the fence because back in the day when this Panther Platform was just starting to be modified, and with my experience, that was with a Marauder. We didn't really have a lot of options for control arms like we do now. Metcos were just coming out. They were very expensive billet aluminum control arms, and a lot of guys couldn't justify the price of what they were asking for it. So we figured out some other ways through innovation and necessitation. Basically, what you have is this sleeve is in the middle of this stamped control arm. And guys were figuring out that if you push that sleeve out, you can take two of these control arms and put them together and then push the sleeve back in. The issue that I have is I would want to box the back side of this that's open, but if you look at these two control arms, the factory one is completely straight all the way down to right about here, and it flares and gets narrow, whereas this one from Moog is like a steady radius all the way to the middle and then all the way down to the bushing. So to do it that way really won't do me much good. I think what I'm gonna have to do is kind of reverse these things and do them something like that. Of course, the bushing won't be there, so that's essentially what it's gonna look like right there. I think that's gonna be my best bet. And then I can just do some stitch welds in a few places here in the middle where these two arms come together. Now, both of these are steel. There's nothing really fancy. It's just stamped steel. They've got some sort of coating on them. So that is my plan. I'm gonna try to push the bushings out of this one and see what happens. And if the bushing comes out successfully, then I'll move these over and we'll give it a whirl and see what happens. If it doesn't work, then I'll just leave these bushings as is. I'll throw the control arm in and I won't have a clunk in the back of this car anymore. And then eventually, when this thing gets to a point where I'm ready to do some upgrades, I'll just replace these control arms and put them on the shelf or sell them to somebody else like myself that may not be worried about performance on this car. So, all right, well, I'm gonna get rolling on this. Let's move over to the press. All right, so I've got my very illustrious, expensive press here. I'm gonna put that control arm kind of in the middle, but I definitely wanna make sure that I support the lip of that control arm. I don't want it to deform. And then see if we can do something like that, if that'll be enough to push it down. Basically what that is like a 27 millimeter socket or something. It's not one that I use very often, that's why it's rusted. But I figured this will give me kind of like the best bite instead of trying to flip it over and take the chance of messing up the backside. All right, then we get some pressure on it. Yeah, I think it's working. It's pushing that bushing right on out of there. Sweet. There we go. I'll flip it over. We'll do this other side. And there's that bushing. So you can see there's a lot of shoulder here, a lot of room, and then it tapers from about this point over. So we've got plenty of room to move that control arm over, or move the bushing over on the control arm itself. And then again, it'll be just kind of a low buck upgrade. This is exciting stuff. Watching me lower this jack. Very exciting. But hopefully this will help some of you guys, because I don't know if this is allowed for any kind of like road racing that they do, or any kind of like circle track racing. But maybe this will help some of you guys that do that stuff. There we go. All right. We should be able to use the same socket for the new control arm. I would imagine it would be pretty similar in size. There we go. I might clean this up a little bit. And I'm just making sure that nothing in here like tore or anything, which it didn't. It looks good. It probably flexed a little bit. There's, like I said, there's a coating that they put on these things. They're not raw. I was getting ready to press the bushings out of the new control arm, and I actually had a thought. Instead of trying to mess with this radius and flip the control arm over, I think what I'm going to do is take my angle grinder and just knock that peak out of the radius, so where it basically it's the same thickness here and here as it is in the middle. So I'll just knock this down because my first thought was, if I put these two together, and if you look here at the bottom, it's very close to matching. The bushing sits in the middle. There's kind of a curve here that matches, and I could weld it here, here, and here, and then come over here like in this neck down section and weld on the backside, and then come out here to the peak and weld. And then I could probably use the press if I heated this control arm, the new one or the stock one up, and then like bent it over. But man, that's a lot of work, and really all I need to do is just knock that peak out, and then I can weld this in stitch welds, and it'll do the same thing. I mean, the outside of this is going to be touching the bushing. I don't necessarily need to box the end down here because that doesn't really do anything. All the string's coming from the bushing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that angle grinder and knock the peak out, get it to the same thickness here and here, and then weld it together. Get the welder fired up. I'm gonna clamp this together so it doesn't move. All right, I'm just putting some really basic C clamps on here. I don't want this to move. And I can kind of weld up to it. I can close that gap in a little bit. My bushing is still kind of centered in the hole. Same thing here in the back. I could probably, no, that's good. All right. All right, let's get some tacks on this thing. It's still pretty warm, so I'm gonna let this cool off. And then we'll bring this over to the press. I'm gonna have to find a socket bigger than this opening because I wanna support the ends of these control arms as I push this in. This is a relatively flat surface. I might be able to just put it on the press and get it to go in. And then I'm gonna seat this sleeve, the shoulder of that sleeve right there, up against that control arm, and then we'll see where that gets us. I'm gonna let this cool off for a minute. We'll go from there. All right, I got the press set up, 36 millimeter axle socket. We're gonna push this in. There it goes. And we're seated. All right, I'm gonna let the pressure out a little bit, flip this around. You can see it centers the bushing. Now, I might need to bring this out a little bit more. I'll put it into the car and see where it lies, but this may need to come over just a smidge. Maybe seating this flange against the control arm might not be the best thing. We'll see how it sits in the car. I'll grab another control arm, the other new one, and compare it to it. So on this one, yeah, I should be able to seat it to that flange and it should be okay. Now, if you notice, it closed up this side on me, so it did bend a little bit. I can come back in here and just do a couple of spot welds, and then when I go to push this back out, it won't bend this back out. That's probably what I'll do. All right, so we'll move it to this side. Get our socket set up here. I'm trying to keep everything as possibly centered as I can. That looks good. It may bend this end down also. Yeah, it looks like it is. It's closing that end up for me. All right, we'll leave that there. It's not 100% seated against it, so we'll just kind of compare it to the other control arm, the other new one, just to make sure that it's straight. It didn't bend the control arm or change any of the geometry. But you can see it's moved that over quite a bit. So we may need to move this over to match it. But before I do that, I'm definitely going to weld that. So let's try it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to need to push that back out. All right, see how that bushing is kind of not sitting straight. And then when you compare it to this one, you can see how much it actually moves. So I'm going to go ahead, weld up this area right here, and then push this bushing back out, which should straighten it out to kind of match this other new one. I went ahead and test fitted them into the car. Looks like they're gonna line up pretty good. Looking in there, you can see there's plenty of room to move around, and especially back here. I don't think that the bushing needs to be moved. I mean, it looks like the bushing's kind of straight, and that the arm is at an angle, which I don't think will change the geometry enough to really worry about, because the bushing, you know, it's a sleeve, it's a hard mounted sleeve. So no matter where this arm is, as long as the bushing is straight, in theory, well, I guess the arm could change geometry a little bit, but honestly, it wasn't hard to get back in here. It wasn't any harder to get either one of these bolts in as it was coming out. So just for peace of mind, I'm going to move it over on the sleeve just a little bit to kind of center the arm a little bit more on that sleeve. And then I'm going to put them back in, but I wanted to make sure that everything didn't touch. Now that little tab that you see here is the captured nut that goes in the frame. It is a little close to that. So yeah, moving it over 1/4 of an inch should give me plenty of clearance. Right now it's got about 1/8 of an inch. So I'll move that over, put it back in. I'll probably go ahead and paint it before I completely install it. That way you guys can see like the finished product. All right, a little engine enamel, and this thing turned out to look really good. I didn't explain how to get this out, but it's very simple. The front bolt up here is an 18 millimeter. The back one is a 15 millimeter with a flag nut that faces the outside here. And it's kind of hard to do with one hand, but you can see it drops right into the pocket. I'll put the bolt in from the inside out. Flag nut goes out here. This has a bolt that goes through this bracket, through the control arm, and into that little tab, which is a captured nut on the inside of the frame. Tighten this up to the proper torque. I'll actually have to look it up. I don't know it off heart. And you're done with the upper. And the same thing for the lower. That bolt comes out in the front. Down here on the back of the housing, get another bolt and a nut on the inside. I don't know what sizes those are because I haven't done them yet. But that's kind of the same thing. And you see how much room is actually in this pocket for these control arms. I mean, there's a ton of room. So I'm going to get to work on the lower. I'm going to put the upper in, and then I'll come back when I've got this side done. Working on the lower control arm now, and I've run into a little bit of an issue. It's not going to work the same way as the upper did. The problem I have is when you put these two control arms together and you kind of clamp it in the middle, there's like a 1/8 inch gap that runs down the center because of the pushed in or stamped in sections of the middle of the control arm. I think the way that will work the best to fix this is if I go inside of here and drill like 5 holes and rosette weld the new control arm to the old control arm. Prior to doing that, I'm going to go ahead and push the bushing all the way through, make sure it's flush, and then I'll only have to worry about getting the old control arm over that bushing. So let's do that. I may come back and actually do a few welds across the top and the bottom. It's not going to be as nice as the uppers are, but hopefully it'll still work. All right, this lower is done. I got pretty good penetration on the welds. Those plug welds over here on this other side, which will now be the back side. I'm going to let this cool off, shoot it with some paint, and then we'll get that mounted in the car too. Well, I got into a groove. I got everything wrapped up, and I forgot to hit record on one of the clips. After that control arm was welded up, I got it painted. It's back in here. Did this exact same thing on the other side, upper and lower control arms. This car got a ton of stuff done to it while I was here in the garage. So this is all stuff that was on the driver's side, but I did a quick strut from Monroe. We did a lower control arm, upper control arm, tie rod in, both of the hubs. Everything on the front is all brand new except for like the steering rack. I even did sway bar end links. I mean, just everything up there, because this thing had that clunk and it just felt wore out. So this is all the stuff that was on the passenger side. I gotta say I'm pretty happy with it now. The last thing I need to do is just get it aligned, and then from there it should be good to go. This car has new tires on it. We got new brakes on the rear. I went ahead and put some lower mile pads that I had left over from the red Marauder on the front. The pads that were on this had some cracking in it, and it just didn't look very good. So those lower mile pads from Mike's Marauder really helped us out there. Well, that wraps up everything that I need to do for now on this car. I do need to do an oil change, but I'll get to that a little later. Probably just some other little maintenance stuff. So I've never done the fuel filter on this car, so I'm sure it's going to need a fuel filter. Other than that, all of our suspension is good to go. New airbags, new control arms, new shocks here in the back. I mean, absolutely everything. You really can't do much more to this other than pull the rear end out and go through that. Maybe I'll do that in the future. This does not have a track lock in it, and I would love to have a track lock. I think that open diff on this car is kind of a goofy choice by Ford, but, you know, whatever. We can get a track lock from a Mustang relatively cheap for people that are upgrading to like 31 spline axles. I can get that 28 spline. Replace the clutches, maybe re-gear this to like 373 or something. This thing would be a blast with gears in it. But as far as low buck upgrades, let me know what you think about the control arms. Is that something you would do to your car? You have any questions about it? Drop that down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your support, and remember to stay gloved up.